slouching or whatever, just do the old.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on My Business, Your World. I'm your host, Dr. Corrinne Graham, and I'll let you take a guess at what kind of doctor I am. I apologize for the delay in our programming. We had some miscommunication and misunderstanding with a few time constraints, challenges to get through. We are a management consulting firm that offers an array of services to businesses and business owners to become successful and profitable. We partner with the primary decision makers to transform their business, their vision into profitability. We're here to help guide your decisions and transform your business into a profitable business. We also offer training programs that include personal development, time management, and HR. You may visit our website at www.grahamconsultingandresearch.com or send us an email at info@grahamconsultingandresearch.com. We wanted to bring you this program today because it focuses on your needs. As an operations specialist, I understand the day-to-day challenges of businesses in every size. Our goal is to take the audience on a journey that allows them to see some of the challenges to help them become more profitable. It's very challenging to get a targeted message out, and we want to allow businesses to be able to take those risks. Today, my guest is Mr. Richard Crescenzo, who is currently involved in the financial services. He has been managing investments for his current clients throughout the U.S. for at least 30 years. He's a certified portfolio manager as well as a financial advisor, specializing in retirement, financial, and estate planning. Richard's firm, Capital Service Management, currently oversees about $4 billion in clients' worth of assets. Richard resides here on Long Island with his wife and 3 kids. He's also involved in several programs in the field of business and working with a number of charities. In regards to the programs Richard has established, he's established a mentoring program with a number of different institutions here on Long Island that helps us in mentoring financial advisory for college students. He's also done several charity work through his church, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Friends of Karen, and local YMCA. Richard, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
I hope you had a great start to your week. I know we have a couple of different topics we wanted to talk about today,
Sure.
And I think that's going to probably take us quite a bit to wrap up. So maybe we'll see you in another 2 to 3.
Be honored. I'd
Thank
be
you.
honored.
All right, so some of the areas there for businesses that I believe are some of the challenges has to do with startup capital, some startup cost, hiring the right employees, and location. We have taxes, technology, using that in terms of how do you use technology to be effective in marketing and advertising, and transportation and getting the right consultant to work with.
It's a lot.
Yes, 2 to 3 at least programs.
Sure.
All right. So what are some of your thoughts on startup costs for a lot of small businesses here on Long Island specifically?
Well, I think the most important thing is you need to start with a plan. And I think if you truly spend the time getting acclimated or familiar with what your competitors are going through, probably location is one of the most expensive things. Where do I rent my business? Do I want to be on a main pedestrian mall? Do I want to be on a side road? There's a lot of costs involved there. And I think when you look at location, the most important thing that you can probably realize is, am I more retail? Am I research development? Do I need the facial or the foot traffic to say? Or can I get away with being more in an industrial park? So, again, that's going to determine how you're going to spend your capital. Are you going to be using more marketing, or you're going to be using more paying the higher rent for that, again, for that foot traffic that comes through? So I think, again, capital is having sufficient capital will get you through not only the startup phase, but the interim phase. Because as you know, a lot of small businesses unfortunately have a very high failure rate. But there are those that do make it. And the second probably demise to most of those businesses is the fact that within 6 to 9 months, they start to develop a following, and they start to realize they have a successful product. But now they may need to incorporate more space, more inventory. And the question is, where do I go for that extra capital? That's a tough situation. That's where we have problems.
I believe this failure rate is 50% for small business in the first 5 years.
Yes.
And it's a bit challenging because I think a lot of the times they're afraid to take the risk and ask the questions as to what can help to make the difference. Another challenge that I see is there's not enough individuals that are there to offer them that short-term cash flow that they need. I notice a few institutions are actually trying to remedy that, to not make it so difficult and challenging for them to be able to get the additional cash flow and rent borrowing from how many relatives, family members, and having to pay, and mortgage, refinancing homes and so on, to try and get through certain huddles.
You're right on with that. And the thing that people don't realize is that there are some outlets like Small Business Administration, SBA does offer loans. The problem we're also seeing is on the financial side. We've had a lot of small institutions get gobbled up. We've seen a lot of even big banks get gobbled up. So the amount of the lenders that are out there have somewhat dwindled. It has created, though, an open area for what we call a cottage industry, where you have a lot of small, I won't call them small, but third-party lenders that want to have interest. The problem is those interest rates can be a little steep at times. So sometimes you can't allow your dream to take over reality, because you have to realize, do I really want to finance the startup with a 16% interest payment? Probably not. So with that being said, the best way to start any business is with the cheapest form of capital, and it's whether you're doing it through your personal, if you have the money saved, if you're able to borrow through a third party, cheap, that is probably going to be a good advantage coming out of the starting blocks of starting a business. But that's only one thing, as we know. So I would say, again, what it comes down to is having the right capital and having it at the right price. If you can do that, I think you're going to start off pretty well.
I find it interesting. I would imagine, I'm not too familiar with the cottage system, so to speak, but then also in terms of third party, are these usually like venture capitalists?
Yeah, there's actually some unions have started to get involved with this as well, but most of them are venture capitalists who have put together pools of money. A lot of them really are looking for to start off with a small business to make it grow over a period of 3 to 5 years, with the intention of maybe franchising it and possibly even taking it public. The capital in those situations can be reasonable, but then you have just traditional third-party lenders that they understand that the risk, what they're making, the capital, it's what we call need or demand versus supply. In this situation, how bad do you want to borrow my capital? And this allows them to charge exorbitant rates. And, unfortunately, you have to stay in check. You have to realize, no matter how your goal, your dream is, you can't, risk it. It's not worth it. It really, sometimes you just got to say no, and maybe you have to hold off a while till you can find the right lender. So third-party lenders, again, it depends on what their motive is. That's what it comes down to.
I think for most small businesses, what I've experienced with our clients and colleagues and individuals as you network, 80% of you do business is through networking and relationships. They don't have a business plan. And a business plan kind of lasts you all the way through your business cycle. And I don't think they think about it, because these are some of the areas and challenges that they go through had they really developed one, or even if they've started and they know they have a great product. Like now, I think those little apps, you can just do something really quickly, sell it, and make a fortune, then it goes away, then there's a new something of the sort. I believe that is very, very critical Another a challenge I feel for them, and you touched on it, is their rent costs. And I know there is a lot of different areas that they can really minimize those costs. A lot of individuals are actually working from home, so they don't necessarily have those costs. So you kind of have to look at some of the other things of what they're doing or what they're not doing out there. Have you heard any stories?
Well, it depends, as you said, when we talk about small businesses, I have dear friends of mine that operate businesses out of their home. They were employed by a company that eventually closed down, and they had the skill to continue going, and they work it out of their home. Image was not an issue because they had contacts. What I think we're more focusing on is the individual who decides after 20 years of commuting back and forth to the big job that they've now said, I've had enough, and I'm ready to start my own business. I can do this, whether it be a retail shop or whatever the case may be. So what happens is you need a plan. The best way I can make an analogy would be if you were going on a very important interview, would you walk in without a resume?
Why not?
Good luck. Hopefully the person interviewing is your uncle, aunt.
You can charm your way through it, right?
There you go. So, and a resume is a plan, And I think, and this is where the need, where consultants become very important. A lot of first-time small business ventures, they take a look and they say, well, I went on the internet. They call it do it yourself. It's do it yourself, the quickest way to fail your business. You need to hire, I think, third-party professionals. Because the question really comes down to is simple things. Should I buy that equipment? Should I lease it? There are some of my clients I manage money for are actually in the machine shop business. They make parts for the airlines, aviation industry. And they tell me that, if you were starting out today, why spend $1 million for a brand new machine when you can probably search around and look at an auction and get that machine for as little as $200,000-300,000? So again, we're talking manufacturing here, but having consultants work with you, they can steer you in those areas. They can tell you, what service providers, internet service providers. My own company recently, we went through a series of interviews, and we thought we had the right company till we went out and hired a consultant. And the consultant said, no, you don't want them, and because of A, B, C, D, E, and so on. So I think the most important thing is if you're really not that experienced with that industry, I truly believe you should invest some of your money into a consultant, a third-party consultant. As simple things as which you're familiar with, human resources. How do I do this with healthcare insurance? Unemployment benefits. Do I make them employees or should they be subcontractors? And that's a whole other realm we don't even want to get into with the IRS now, claims what a subcontractor is or isn't.
Right.
So I think the most important thing is, yes, you do need to sit down and write an extensive plan. Again, on a side anecdote, I had the opportunity to meet a few writers. Most writers don't sit down and write a book. They actually create an outline. And this outline may take months, multiple pages, 30, 40 pages of an outline, before they finally start to go back and then fill in the story. And I think if you're setting up a business, you really need to truly incorporate what I call best case, worst case scenario. And you really need to and you have to be realistic. And you also have to do research. You have to realize, is the product that I'm going to make or sell, is it in demand? I mean, one of the biggest advantages on Long Island right now is we have 3 million people that reside here. Do you realize, as a side, just a little side fact, the state of Connecticut has 3 million people. Okay? Well, and on top of that, we have the 5 boroughs in New York City, all 5 boroughs, which gives us another 11 some odd million people. So we have a tremendous, we're not short of clientele, and we didn't even get into the internet nor international, but staying locally, we have the demand. The question is, do we have the product? And of course, naturally, who are our competitors? Can we compete against them? It's an interesting scenario, and I think that if you've written a plan and you've looked at all the negatives and the positives, I think what really ends up happening is you then can figure out, can I serve a niche? Can I make money in this industry? Or should I consider basically abandoning this thought and going down another avenue? These are important questions. It's your hard-earned money. You'd hate to make a mistake coming right out of the box.
Those are all very, very interesting and fascinating things that are affecting businesses today that they have to look at. And this is getting that message, compelling message out so they can make the decision to take the risk that is necessary.
Sure. So,
About some of these initiatives and the risk that we have that these businesses have to take on. It is really tremendous. And the opportunity to find the right consultant is so key when now, as you shared, do I now leave that job? And because I have 20 years experience as a sales or marketing person, now I'm a consultant, I'm an expert. And the challenge is, when you mention about even the resume, I run a personal development program and you look at it. Everything that you're doing, you have to be able to sell those transferable skills. You need the clients. A business plan it kind of helps you, as you said, Chris, start with that outline. Is this really worth it? Now you have things like Shark Tank and so on to help filter through. You have to go to an investor about what this is and why it is that you're going to make that difference. In terms of the demographic landscape of the tri-state area, it's very interesting because there's so many businesses and so many business opportunities, but everyone is kind of holding back and so on. Hence, why are you having that failure rate? You have small businesses that are set and primed to be mid-sized companies and they don't want to transition out of that. You mentioned about manufacturing industries that are doing very well. Market research, so critical. It's not just going online and Googling something and talking to someone and saying that, oh, I did my market research, this is like perfect. Where are you setting it up? What are you doing to differentiate yourself? It doesn't matter if it's the same product, same services. You have to differentiate yourself. And at what point do you become comfortable with knowing that this is good enough for you, it makes what it is? And not all of us are necessarily visionaries or want to champion a project, any project to get to the next level. But even if you want to sustain, you still have to work that much harder.
That's right. I think the other thing about a business plan, it forces you to address issues and ask questions that you might not want or feel comfortable with asking. And some of those questions might be, what if 2008 was a great example? We had a meltdown in the market, and not only did it affect Wall Street, it affected Main Street. Can I survive? I looked at the auto industry. They literally saw a 50% fall off in car sales. There were just no lenders out there. Money had dried up. Now, the smart dealerships had cash put away for that. They knew that was going to happen. Unfortunately, those that were highly leveraged, they're not here anymore. And this is why I think you have to ask yourself that question. Can I survive how long? 6 months? 9 months? What if I'm going to go into a research and development company? Long Island is becoming a phenomenal fertile ground for what we call life sciences right now. And I know Stony Brook, which you've done work with them, they've created some form of an incubator. We have Cold Spring Harbor Labs, Brookhaven National Labs. So we're starting to see a lot of pop-ups. Unfortunately, when you get involved with life sciences or research and development, it could take 3 to 5 years before you start to generate revenue. Minimal, okay? So we're not talking...
Break even and all that.
A stationery store, a pizzeria, where you may turn profitable in 2-3 months. We're talking long-term businesses. So you have to ask yourself that question, do I have the ability, do I have the lines of credit, to sustain, whether it be what I call a market impairment, okay? Can I sustain, just to give you an analogy, if I may, television, okay? I don't watch much of it, but if you remember the famous sitcom, Friends, you realize the first year Friends almost was completely taken off and dropped.
Really?
It was considered, nobody was watching it. They changed up the writers, they changed the dialogue a little bit, and Friends probably went on to become one of the greatest sitcoms ever that we've ever seen. And this is, sometimes with businesses, they're very slow coming out of the gate. There's a lot of competition, especially in the retail industry. People become very sort of addicted to their dry cleaner, their pizzeria, their supermarket. And unless they have a negative situation, they're not going to leave. So you need to account for that. I may have the greatest product in the world, but you're just not going to leave because, unfortunately, I coined the phrase, I like to say that, what is the worst commodity when you're selling something? It's people. Because people are very fickle. They don't know what they want. So you have to be prepared for that downtime. And that's why, as I say, when you get into, again, writing that business plan, you need to incorporate the what ifs. Sometimes even it can come down to a lease. You may be a little aggressive and take a short-term lease, not realizing that that lease will expire in 2 years, and now all of a sudden the landlord is jacking your rent up, which is crazy. And believe me, moving is not an easy thing to do once you've established your company and your position. So a business plan, if done right, and again, it should be done with a consultant. A business plan gives you the opportunity to explore all the what ifs. And I think because once you do that, and you've written a proper business plan, and then look at it, and if you can sit there and say, I can overcome all this, it's not a problem, then you're on your way. You're definitely on your way.
It's so critical and it's so important, even on a personal scale. I think individuals have to do what is their own business plan. They don't think about it, your personal development plan, to look at the areas of what it is you're looking, where it is you're looking to go. You want a 5-year sabbatical, but you want to try something else out. How's that going to fit? How's that going to work with the finances of the family and all those other pieces? One of the things with small business owners I find is everyone thinks they're the expert on everything. And I think that's one of the reasons they don't want to also venture out, and they don't want to hear what it is that you have to say. You can't be the expert on everything. As much as it is with my background, I have had the opportunity to work the C-suites and in a number of different size industries. I'm not necessarily an expert in an industry, but what I'm taking to any business or any colleague or organization or individual is a core skill set that's going to help to grow your business, make you more successful or better in terms of whatever development process. And I guess we have to then identify what are some of the key things we would look at in terms of hiring a consultant. And you started to touch on a couple of the things which go to in terms of when you're doing your market research, make sure that they are actually experts in that field or know something about it enough or have a strategic database or alliances or partnership that's going to allow them to be the most effective consultant for you.
Well, I use consultants in my business, and I ask for a resume. I want to see who you worked with, what jobs you've done. I ask for references, and I do call the references. I think it's important. You want to try and ascertain as much information you can from that person you're going to be doing business with. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who had been in the business a long time, got downsized, and decided they were a business consultant. And truthfully, they were good at what they did, but they didn't understand the big picture. So I think the most important thing you should do is you should truly interview that person as though they were going to be on your staff as an employee. And I would look at that resume and I would scrutinize it. And I would familiarize myself with some of the things in that industry, so this way I could ask you pertinent questions. If I'm asking you about, if you tell me that you're an expert in benefits or you know the Obamacare health care legislation, I'm going to find a couple of things I'm going to ask you about. And if you stumble on it, I'm going to have questions, it's, and it's okay. And if you tell me that's not my area of expertise, I'll respect that. But I think it's important. You just can't hire a consultant because, wow, they're affordable and they're cheap. Never do that. Never, ever do that. I can trust you, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
I actually have not, I'm just going to use experience in terms of job, not as a consultant, but career path. One position that I was interviewed for, and similar, you're in this area, tell me, you do this, tell me X. I was the only person to answer the question. I got a 1.5. And the reason why it was 1.5, it was correct, is because they were looking for the other end of, and I just answered the two key part were the two places that it did affect. I didn't do it in the format that it was, but it was correct. So they were looking for this part, but they gave a half because the other point was correct. But it's important. It's important for you to be able to talk to someone and say, if I'm talking to you about, as a financial advisor, these are some of the things that you need to look at and so on. You want to say something that picks up the ears. It makes sense. It makes a difference, because that's how you're going to be that person that they're going to. Some people are very good at sales pitch. That also brings me to a challenge I think a lot of small businesses face. They feel that everyone's in their pocket.
Sure.
And not in a good way.
Right. It does pay to be cynical, though, to be honest with you. It's not the worst thing in the world, but again, what I have found from successful people who've run businesses and turned them into massive success stories is you do as much hardcore research as you can. Most likely, if you've done your job well, you will probably have a 90-95% success ratio with them. I think that the biggest problem that you have is that you're trying to save a few dollars, and you're using somebody who's maybe was an industry, had been in the industry a long time, and you start to think that, okay, well, I don't really need to go out and spend X amount of dollars, or this is a family friend of mine. No, you want complete objectivity. You want to be able to, in the event that if you have somebody who you feel he's not doing his job, you want to be able to call him out on it. Yes. And this is a problem when friends and families get involved. You have a situation, it's like, oh, I don't want to hurt his or her feelings. Listen, this is your money. So your courtesy will be, unfortunately, your downfall.
It's good to have that you have that resource, maybe as a third, or to get an opinion or some kind of feedback, but I definitely agree with you. And I think a lot of times, even family businesses, those are some of the reasons why a lot of them fail. They do well. I have businesses that I know that they were like a $40 million business. They're down to $200,000. They have no debt. But why are they down to that? There are a number of different, it's a family business. They've been in business for 40, 50 years and so on and so forth. But it is important. You want that neutrality. You want someone to be able to sit and say, this is not going to work and this is why it's not going to work. And then you make the decision from there. They should be that second brain that you want to have, or third brain, to help you to execute those decisions. So I definitely agree with you on.
And consultants can also, with all good intentions, and unfortunately a very dear friend of mine went out and hired a consultant. Person on paper looked like $1 million, had everything right, came in there and literally restructured the company. It was a very small company, a few employees. Consultant came in and said, you got to get rid of this person, you got to get rid of that person, and she did. Unfortunately, the company then took severe hits and losses, not realizing that some of the employees underneath her were responsible for some unbelievable amounts, bringing wealth in. So you have to be careful. That's all I'm going to say. You got to learn, to, once again, to be objective and know when to terminate a relationship.
Absolutely, and I think it's very, very critical to understand how those consultants are going to work in your best interest. And sure, there are individuals out there who look like $1 million, but they can't do the work of $1 million.
Absolutely. I'll let you go where you want to go.
Okay. All right. So let's just talk a little bit about, we're talking about financing and financial options. We have to talk about that, whether or not it's on a personal level or a business level. That fun thing, credit score.
Well, again, even lenders need some kind of definitive metric, if you will, to figure out. There are all types of lenders for all types of credit scores. Again, if you unfortunately have a lousy credit score, you're doing something wrong. And maybe you shouldn't possibly be in that position, because you're going to definitely, if you do get money loaned to you, it will be at a substantial rate. But I think you need to, and more often than not, you need to get your house in order, financially speaking. Because usually a lousy credit score is due to your late payments, bills, and so on. And if you're going to be a late payer in your personal life, what are you going to be like in your business life? You know, unfortunately, especially with small companies, suppliers don't like to be held up. And, you know, and if, you know, so it's a situation where I think you really, truly need to get into a habit, especially if you know you're going to open up within 6 months, to get your house of cards in order.
One of the challenges I feel is if we are looking at credit score just in general, it's not necessarily that the house is not in order depending on the financial challenges. Going back to those companies and third parties that are providing at exorbitant rates, or you're not getting those rates, is oftentimes it's on the personal side that the business owner suffers, versus because they're going to sacrifice to make those business expenses and so on. It is pretty challenging when the resources are not available to you, and then if you're in an economic downtime, or I don't want to say a recession, it's not looking that good. For example, on Long Island, I think and I've heard this oftentimes, is when it hits somewhere else, it's later that the impact is here, and vice versa, so it takes you long to come out of it when everybody else is doing great in terms of business.
Absolutely. Downturns, recessions, it's a trickle-down theory. And unfortunately, when things start to unfold, in the end, the small employer, the small borrower, is the one who becomes not the benefit, but unfortunately becomes the result of lack of funds. I think what you're really looking at is when you, getting back to borrowing and the credit score and all that, there are lenders out there. There's actually a service now online, which I've been reading about, where you can put in for, if you will, there are groups that are willing to put up money, where people are willing to invest small amounts, 100, 200, 300, and you submit your business plan, and you submit your business and what you want to do. And this, again, when I use the term cottage industry, it became a sub-industry of traditional lenders, because unfortunately you'd go to your banks or you'd go to these third-party lenders and they'd all stamp denied, denied, denied. So what happened is you had a series of individuals who were quite successful and very wealthy, and I will say a lot of them were entrepreneurs from the West Coast that made it big in the information technology area, and they decided to put some capital up. And I don't, off the top of my head, don't know what these websites are, but you can find them. And what happens is you can literally submit a business idea, and you can borrow as much as $35,000, $40,000, $50,000, or you want to borrow $5,000.
Yeah, a lot. That's in a lot of industry, and I don't want to interrupt or cut you off from that train of thought, but I did want to point out and just add to what you were sharing with, there's information out there, but it doesn't mean that because it's canned or generic that a lot of times it costs people a lot of money, because they're going, oh, look, there's this perfect contract, it says what I need to, and then you get Jeff, you don't get the payment that you need to because it wasn't set up. You didn't go to an attorney to pay $300, $1,500, and now you lost $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever that amount is just for that expense.
Very good point. That, when we talked earlier about consultants, attorneys, small business attorneys are worth every dollar they charge, because when you start signing these predatory contracts, as we call them, we're looking at a situation where there may be so many fees involved that you applied for a $10,000 loan and realized that $2,500 came right off the top for fees and expenses. It goes on all the time. As a matter of fact, credit card companies are notorious for marketing to people with bad credit, and they'll say, we'll give you a $1,000 line of credit, but it's going to cost you $350 up front.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm being charged interest on my own money. That makes sense. So with that being said, having a good attorney who knows how to read through contracts or the fine print, that's something without a doubt. Never go it alone if you're going to go for a substantial amount of money. It's silly.
It's interesting that I think as business owners, doesn't matter what scale or size business that you're in, that we do not pay attention to some of the key and core things that affects your business. And when I talk about general counsel in general, people, it's like, oh, it's way over my head. No, it's not. It's those simple things that as a small business owner, you need to be able to iron out. You need to know, because that's what's going to cost you that $10,000, $20,000 or $100,000 that you're looking for that you lost, just because you did not go through and see what are some of the things. Have a good contract. Have a good contract that the sale means what it is, whatever it is that you need is specific to your business and to your needs. And it still rules in favor of the client, but also protects your business.
Should I incorporate? Should I be a limited partner, an LLC, an LLP? These are very important things for taxation purposes. What about if I'm buying an existing business? If I'm, first time I'm buying it, would you go in and buy a house without using an attorney? Of course not. So why would you try and do that on a business? And you have no idea. Especially if they're holding notes or situations like that. So I agree. An attorney, especially, and again, try and pick an attorney that is familiar with small businesses, familiar with incorporation. I think it's important, because this way, again, they can read through that fine print. Because one of the biggest mistakes, and we hear it all the time out there, I read it in my own industry newsletters, is people say, okay, I don't want to start from ground zero. I have the money, so I'm going to buy into a franchise. Oh, when you see, you have to buy from a dedicated supplier, and you have to have X amount of dollars, and you can only do this, and you can only sell that. And when you really do rip apart these contracts, they're not so lucrative after a while. So again, don't be afraid to incorporate an attorney, whether they charge you $300 or $400. It's perfectly fine. So
and it goes back to, we're talking about research and market research. It is so important for you. A lot of individuals who are looking for that supplemental income or something that will help them, they're looking into franchises and not necessarily have what it is or what it means to be that. I think it is very important to understand that that's going to be very effective, cost effective for you in the long run, and that you're not dumping everything. And even if it's a franchise, you still have to do that skeleton of a business plan, which is an assessment and analysis. Is this going to be good for me? Is this going to be work? What are we worth it? And work with people who are able to spend a couple of bucks up front versus waste a couple thousand, $100,000 of dollars.
Right. If you object to or feel you can't afford an attorney and a consultant, then by no means should you be entering a business on your own, because you're not equipped. Simple as that. You need as much protection as you can get. You need to uncover every potential pitfall, whether it's, again, buying an existing business, getting into a franchise, or starting a business and signing a lease with the landlord. What if you were to shut down 6 months from now? What's going to be your liability? Certain landlords will offer you an opportunity to buy out your lease by giving 3 months in advance.
Yes.
So what is going, these are very important. It's what we call an exit strategy. Nobody goes in business with the intent to fail. But if it does happen, how can I minimize the damage so I'm not going to end up paying for this for the next 20 years of my life?
Topic for another time. I think some
Yes.
people do, because I think, I'm not sure, remember the name of the company, so forgive me here. Is it Charlie Brown? There was something about how he...
The restaurant chain.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he was the owner of the company. So how do you put how many thousands of people out of work, just started, and so on? So
It goes on even with major franchises, which we'll leave the name out, but one of the largest fast food franchises in the world recently had all its franchise owners descend upon its homeland and were up in arms because they changed the rules and the cost of the goods, and you can't go outside and buy your napkins and your plate. Everything had to be done through the parent company, And they were up in arms. And, there was a big major revolt. So you have to really know what are my rights as a franchisee. And again, I'm starting a business. This is my hard-earned capital. What are my rights if things don't work out? Can I sell this business? Can I sell the franchise? It's very important. You always need to know. And here's a lesson that we take from corporate America. Because corporate America, when they decide that they're going to expand and build a new plant and take over another firm, they do have a section called an exit strategy. What if it doesn't work out? What's our downside? How much capital are we willing to risk? And and what will be our downside on leases and so on, equipment sales and so on. So again, take a lesson from corporate America. It's great to be planned and rah-rah and all set to go. But look, sometimes things just don't work out. You brought up something earlier about family businesses. Let me tell you something. Transitioning is becoming a huge word in my business now because, again, I'm involved with running money for families that own family-owned businesses. And the question is, my son and daughter don't want to run the business anymore. Or my nephew's coming in and has no clue what he's doing. Do they have the same work ethic? That will be a topic for another time.
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to even get to touch on. I want to touch a little bit about, which we wanted to talk about, hiring the right people, the university, touching on transportation and cost and living expenses coming out of college or going to college while you're trying to find jobs. But I definitely think we should touch on marketing and advertising in terms of technology.
Absolutely.
I think that's because when you look at the landscape and what's out there, we have to remember technology is important, but it's an accessory and it's just a means for you to be able to help do better and become more successful and efficient in what you're doing. It's not the end all and mean all for everyone.
It's a different world. Pardon me if I'm wrong on my dates, but about 20 years ago, servers were very expensive. And if you had a company and you were doing sales and inventory, it cost you a lot of money. Today, technology has become so cheap with the cloud. You could literally run a 3-4 man operation out of your house and look like a powerful national sales organization, especially if you're going to choose to go online and sell product. We live in a day and age where technology gives the little guy a chance to step into the ring and battle the big boys. It happens. What we're talking about is technology is unfortunately a necessary evil. We need it. But again, like financing, there's so many different technology products out there. It pays to hire a consultant to help you walk through it and tell you what you do need and don't need. It's amazing how much stuff is out there, and and what actually do you need and what don't you need. I think, again, when we're getting into it with the technology and building the business and all that, I think it's important that you also define what kind of business you're in. So you're going to need to know, can I lease my computers? A lot of companies right now are willing to offer you to lease the terminals if you buy their maintenance contract on the computers. So these are things, again, you would sit with a professional or your accountant and you figure out which is the best alternative going forward. So
it's pretty challenging, I think, with technology looking at marketing and advertising, because there are certain areas that are booming and it's going to be short-lived. And we talk about the SEOs and all the social media and so on, opportunities to market a business. They're perfect, they're ideal. They're not really ideal for everyone or every company. And that is where hiring a consultant, someone who knows, is look at your business model, look at the vision and the mission for your company, where you're going. You need to be marketable. It needs to be able to, people need to find, so that builds the credibility of the organization. But to what extent? You have people from all over the world, this is what they do, and they're sending and telling you, and you get overwhelmed because I'm not doing so great. What is the next step? Is it really spending the marketing dollars and trying to advertise and doing it, all these online, or using technology to your advantage? Some things that are technologically advanced that will help businesses sometimes cost nothing, but people don't know that. And these are things that help those outlay the cost outlays that they probably, initial cost outlays, and even in the interim.
Well, again, you touch on the basic, which has probably been centuries old, advertising and marketing, okay? Advertising and marketing, to begin with, help to shape who you are, who you want to be. How do you want the public to perceive you? Look at my industry. Everybody is now in my industry. Banks, accounting firms. It's no longer just brokerage houses. Everybody, you meet your insurance broker and he's selling you a retirement plan. It's everywhere. So the question really comes down to, and I've met with many consultants who said the successful financial advisors in my industry, they're not everything to everyone. Define who you want to be. Do you want to be a retirement plan specialist? Do you want to work on corporate pension plans? Do you want to handle senior, like traditional family wealth management? And I think the same thing goes with your business. How do you define yourself? Who are you? Who do you want to be? And then the fact that you can use technology can advance it that much further.
Just a couple of quick things, because as I shared, we could go on forever and a day here. It's always exciting chatting with you and learning about some of the initiatives and things you're working on. I know some businesses, I've been on one of the boards that I'm a member of. We've hosted small business seminars, and we look at CEOs and what they've done. One of the things is in good time, most of them, a few, not most, put away for those bad times. Another thing they touch on is hiring. A lot of times we're so, it's a family unit. You know these people for 20 plus, 10, 5, however many years, and they have a family, so you don't want to let them go. But you have to make that hard decision to know that you have to let an individual go. In terms of marketing and advertising, two different evil, but all the synergy, and they relate, one complement the next. It is very challenging for small businesses, and I think this is one of where the takeaway is you have to be able to get that message out to them, to listen. Richard, thank you so much for joining us on our first show, and thank you for joining us. I want to thank the crew of Cablevision and also at Madhouse TV, Dwight Hunter, for helping me to bring this program to you. I hope you'll find it beneficial. If you want to contact us about or have any questions for Richard or for myself or from our organization, it's telephone number 631-481-9124. You can go to our website. Again, that's www.graham, Graham, Consulting and Research, that's and.com. You can send us an email at info@Graham Consulting and Research. Again, our number 631-481-9124. Thank you for joining us, and have a fabulous day.